I think the most important word in Hebrew, and it's not in every language, is law. Law.
Law.
I'm saying you can get along without can, because you get people who say, here, eat this. But you can't get along without a law. I think that when you live in Israeli society, you should build your borders. Like, when somebody comes to say, you want a falafel? You say can. You say, you want me to hug you? Say, maybe. You say, you want to marry my granddaughter? You say, no. The moment that you know when to say no, you became an Israeli.
Ну что ж, друзья мои, добрый вечер. Это Шанкин 40. Мы вещаем из самого сердца Тель-Авива и вещаем мы на весь мир, чему очень рады. Привет, Россия, Украина, Америка, Европа, Южная Корея, Канада, конечно же. У нас сегодня в гостях писатель Этгар Керет. Добро пожаловать. Брахим убаим. На Шанкин 40.
Nice to be here.
Они Антон. Наймет. Я живу в Израиле около 3 лет. Я родился в Москве. И много чего не понимаю в этой жизни. В моей новой жизни. И надеюсь, что вместе мы что-то поймем.
Great. So
I hope.
My name is Edgar, and my father came from Baranovice, which is now in Belarus, and my mother came from a small village next to Warsaw, so I'm kind of half Belarusian, half Polish, and I've lived all my life in Israel. I don't speak Russian, and I don't speak Polish.
Подожди, ну какие-то слова вы знаете?
Of course, I think that my father would not speak in Russian at home because my mother didn't understand Russian, but he would curse in Russian. So Russian was the language of anger. So when I heard Russian in the home, at home I say, okay, I better go to a friend's house.
Плохие ассоциации с русским языком.
No, but actually I must say that I'm not a kind of I don't judge people by categories, so I usually don't have a presupposition, I don't know, for or against people of any nationality, but somehow I have this unexplained love for Russian culture and Russian people. Because I think that as a child, it symbolized for me many things that didn't exist in the Israeli society. Because I think that, for example, respecting a professional, knowing that to work at something, you have to learn it thoroughly. Kind of telling people who whine and complain, shut up. All those things, for me, I associate them with Russian attitude. And I think that, as Israelis, we're very good at many things. I like that. But I think that this idea, this almost Donald Trumpish Israeli idea that everybody knows best about anything, it's something that always annoyed me. It's something that stops you from taking the next step.
Понятно. Ну, давайте разбираться тогда по порядку во всем. Вы уже сказали про свою семью, и если я правильно знаю, 5 поколений вашей семьи не умирали своей смертью.
Yeah, I think that, first of all, because of the Holocaust, my mother lost all her family in the Holocaust, including grandparents and everything. But on my father's side, it was that apparently all the males in our family always liked to debate and to argue, and were not very good at knowing when they should and when they shouldn't. It's like they say that my great-grandfather, he was thrown out of a moving train over a bridge, because he was reading a book and there was a group of drunk Cossacks singing, and he asks them not to sing loud because it bothers him when he reads the book, and they threw him off the train. So this is really like this kind of history that I go with, And my wife says that I just leave the part, because when I'm in a situation, I can be curious, I can be interested, I can be passionate. I'm not very good at noticing that I'm in danger or that I'm saying something that I shouldn't say. I'm not very good at kind of understanding the situation. I just do stuff.
Это история, которая... Вот я наблюдаю на улицах. Кто-то на кого-то орет. В русской культуре это значит, что следующее кто-то кого-то будет бить. Но тут в Израиле это ничего не значит. Вы орете друг на друга, потом вы обнимаетесь, целуетесь, орете. То есть, если я правильно понимаю, крик ничего не значит здесь.
I would say in general, talking doesn't mean a lot. You know, it's like, I think that Israel is what we like most is to talk, but at the same time, we know that it means nothing. So I think that it's like, let's say if you see a car accident or something, then usually when you are in a place, then most of the people are petrified, they don't know what to do, and there's always this competent person jumping, and you know, in Israel, what's happening is that everybody speaks, argues with each other, and there is this guy that would jump and save, but nobody notices because they're already arguing with somebody else that he did something wrong. So I'm saying, it's not that I don't like it, and as you see, I talk a lot, but there is something about this kind of foreignness and seriousness that I feel that is missing. And I can tell you that when I published my latest story collection, it's called Autocorrect. I worked with David Polonski. He's like an illustrator and a wonderful animator. He did Walls with Bashir and many other.
Bashir.
He did the animation. And so when we worked, he made 17 sketches for the cover. And he's Russian. And I was happy to work with somebody that wouldn't say to me, nah, it's okay, nah, you know, this is like very Israeli. Like you say, how about we do it the right way, you know? Then I really like this Israeli idea that nothing seems to be an obstacle, because I think I did many things in my life that I have no qualifications to do, and still I was able to pull them off because of this belief. But at the same time, whenever I did something that I knew nothing about, I was always very respectful of professionals. And this is the thing that I wish we would have more here.
Есть какое-то особое слово, да? Вот эта вот наглость израильская. Хуцпа, да?
Yeah.
Это вот то, что есть в Израиле. И это важное слово.
Yeah, I think that what's important when you learn Hebrew is not the word, but the connotation that you give to the word. Because I would say the two words like chutzpah and balaghan, which is mess or chaos, in Hebrew they have a positive meaning. So like, because chutzpah, let's say, is to say you're rude. But in Hebrew you say chutzpah, oh, you're rude.
Cool.
You know. And the same thing with, let's say, balaghan, you know, that was imported to Hebrew language. But the idea of balaghan is it associates a mess with vividness. The idea is that if I go to a home and it's very clean, they don't leave. But if the children paint on the wall, if there is a half plate, if somebody left a half bottle of vodka, this is balaghan. So balaghan is a mess, but it also means lively in a sense. And the same thing with chutzpah. Chutzpah means rude, but it also means you got a character, you stand for yourself. And I'm saying that those elements are crucial in the Jewish identity, and I think that they make us a beautiful culture, but always when you go with one thing, sometimes you can forget the other.
Это точно. Вернемся к вашей семье. Тут история не самая веселая, не такая веселая, как балаган и хуцпа, да? Слышали уже историю про вашего дедушку. Ваш папа Ефраим во время войны прятался в погребе, правильно я понимаю?
It was a hole that they dug in the ground. It was in a barn, and him and his parents, they hid there for more than 600 days. and they were being fed by a Christian farmer.
А где это было? В какой стране?
It was Baranovichi. It was then Poland.
Это в Польше.
It was then Poland, and then it became Russia. And the person who saved them was a Catholic anti-Semite, and he didn't like Jews, but he thought it was wrong to kill them. So I think that this idea of my father being saved by an anti-Semite who kind of was willing to sacrifice his life to save him, it brought something to the house, that this idea that things are always more complicated than they seem. You know, my father would, if you would say about somebody, he's an asshole, he would say, yeah, but, you know, there was this kind of idea that we can't just live in a binary word. An anti-Semite can save you, you know, a pedophile could feed you, a rapist could heal you. You know, this idea that you can't pigeonhole people.
Но так же, как в ваших книгах, нет стопроцентных злодеев. То есть они все немножечко хорошие, немножечко несчастные, как в жизни.
Yeah.
А вы как-то делите людей?
Never. It's really like the thing with me is that when I meet a person, I have some kind of an experience, probably like, you know, very narcissistic and you know, and egocentric. But in a sense, sometimes I can come, let's say, from an interview like this, and let's say a woman interviews me. And I go home and I say to my wife, it was amazing. You know, it was such a good talk. And of course, my wife says to me, was she fat? And I say, I can't remember. We talked for hours and I have no notion. You know, it's really like, I kind of, I can go from this interview and I would say, this guy who was very much like a big brother interviewed me. I could imagine we're playing soccer in a yard, you know. But if people would ask me, how much does he weigh? I don't know, does he smell of alcohol? You know, I would say, I don't know. He's just like a big brother. So I'm not very good with details. I think that if I would see a robbery, like the police could not use me as a witness.
А почему ваша жена спрашивает, толстая она или нет?
Because she wants to be sure that he's not beautiful.
Ревнует. Слушайте, а писатели, мне кажется, должны выделять как раз мелочи, детали, запоминать и потом перерабатывать в творчество.
Yeah, but again, you know, this idea is that I think something in my upbringing made me kind of find the details unimportant. You know, I can tell you, if you give me your cell phone, which you, of course, I'm sure you will, and I'll check it, I can find things in your cell phone that would make you a persona non grata anywhere. And I'm saying that without knowing you. I can find the sentence that you wrote when you were drunk. I can find something like this, you know. And we live in a world where we judge people by details. But I'm old enough to remember, you know, when I was young, my next door neighbor, he never used deodorant. He stank like hell. He would play loud music late at night. But every Saturday, he would take me to a soccer game. And when my parents were away, he would make sure that I would eat. So do I like him? Don't I like him? It's complicated. My life, I hitchhiked with people that there were things that I liked about them and I don't like them. But the moment that you fall into the detail, you say, I can't be, you know, I was just in the US and somebody an Oscar-winning screenplay writer said to me, I will not sit in a table with somebody who voted Trump. I said to him, you know, when I grew up, my parents told me it's not polite to ask somebody who they voted for. It's a private thing. Why don't you sit with somebody that you disagree with? And he said, because this person who voted for Trump destroyed the word. And I said, no. he just voted. He just pretends to take part in the democratic game. Your life is hell not because of this guy. And the problem with this guy is not what party he voted, but the fact that he beats up his children and tortures his pet, you know. So I think that the moment that we fall into detail, life becomes a series of Instagram clips. It's not a story anymore. It's just a bunch of sensations.
Для вас какие важны качества в людях?
First of all, I think I like people that I find it very difficult to define them. That when I meet a friend and I try to tell them something about this person, I feel that I'm doing them wrong. But I think that the qualities that I find very sexy in people is reflexiveness, this ability to be in a situation, but also to see yourself from a situation. The ability to be paranoid or obsessive, but at the same time you say, whoa, I'm a bit paranoid and obsessive, let's go with that. Let's be more paranoid and more obsessive, but this ability to see yourself from the outside. And also I think that the ability to listen to something in yourself, kind of to find roots in yourself instead of just going with some kind of a flow.
Ой, слушайте, тогда вернемся опять же к вашей семье. У вас очень разные брат и сестра.
Yeah.
Если я правильно знаю, ваша сестра Харидим, у нее 11 детей. Ваш брат как активист жил в Таиланде, там легализация марихуаны. Вы встречаетесь за одним столом часто?
Yes, it's now my parents are dead, but my brother and me, we have a ritual that every Sunday we meet at my balcony, we smoke a joint and we talk about life. And my sister, I see her less. She lives in Mea Shearim. She has 11 children, more than 50 grandchildren, and I say more, it's just that she stopped counting. She could have 80, and she already have great-grandchildren, and she's 63. So, Anton, you should hurry up, you know? Like, you're gonna be 63 soon, and then when you count...
Обалдеть. Обалдеть. А когда она сказала, ну, например, когда она решила, что она будет Харидим, для вашей семьи, ваши родители это восприняли нормально?
Our home was very secular, but you know, my mother would light candles in Shabbat, but we didn't practice anything. And my sister was an artillery instructor in the army. And she fell in love with one of the officers that she was instructing, and they were engaged. And in the first week of the first Lebanon war, basically the Syrian hit all their artillery units, and they killed a lot of people there, and they killed her fiancé. And I remember my sister saying to me, I don't know what's life, I don't know what's death, but I believe that there is more to life than all the things that I've learned. And she had this decision. She said, I want to go to Bnei Brak, and I want to learn something else, something that I don't know. And she told her family, before I go, I want to tell you that I'm going to be very extreme, and I want to tell you that in advance so you won't think they brainwashed me. So I'm going to have a husband with a black hat, I'm going to speak Yiddish. I'm telling you in advance. And she did that, and it worked. And she's very happy. And I think that in a relationship, sometimes I'm kind of sad that we don't have enough topics to share. Like, you know, if I see something in Netflix, I can't speak to her. If she reads Parashat HaShavua, she can't talk to me. But the thing that I did do, that because she's a Breslaver, they're a special Hasidic kind of group, and the rabbi was a storyteller, I read all the Rabbi Nahman from Breslau tales, and I would talk to her about the tales. So she would say, isn't God great? And I would say, yeah, but the ending sucks, you know, but I don't like this character. So she would talk about belief and I would talk about storytelling, and this was a very interesting meeting point. And I wrote stories like The Bus Driver Wanted to Be God that were actually agnostic Hasidic tales, because I observed so much of the Hasidic tale story. I said, let's tell a Hasidic tale without God, you know? And so I think that every relationship that is meaningful, it becomes a style, a metaphor, an idea. So I think that my love for my sister created a special kind of stories. My brother is a sci-fi fan. So my love for my brother made me also write sci-fi and speculative fiction, you know. My parents, with my parents being a Holocaust survivor, one of the things that I loved the most was to make them laugh. So this made me write funny, because I want, but for me there is something about it that when I write, it's this kind of thing that I want to create a universe for me and the person that I'm telling the story to. You know, the same way as when we speak, if I may, you know, you can edit it out if you don't want. Before we spoke, you suggested that I speak in Hebrew and be interpreted. But I prefer to speak in English for the fact that you understand English better than Hebrew. And when I say a sentence, I don't know what I'm going to say. But when I look at you, I figure it out. And if you don't understand me, I don't know what to say.
А вы представляете людей, когда вы пишете, определенных людей, кто будет читать ваши рассказы?
I invent a reader. Many times it could be like, you know, an elderly African woman with piercing eyes who's 7 feet tall. It doesn't matter. But it's just this kind of thing that I write something and I have this anxiety that what I'm writing, only I will understand in the word. And then I close my eyes and I look at her and she says, I got it. But sometimes she can say, I don't get it. And every time it could be another something. And it's funny that among all those imaginary readers, there is only one specific person that sometimes comes into my mind, who is a Dutch stand-up comedian that I met 12 years ago. So sometimes it's a 7-foot Russian woman, and sometimes it's this guy. And I say, what are you doing here? But he says, it's okay, you can write this. And I say, okay.
Когда вы встречаетесь с братом на балконе, вы рассказываете ему новые сюжеты?
Yeah, with my brother all the time. I read to him a lot. I think that, you know, my problem is like that I've been writing for so many years that all the people around me that in the past they found it innovative and exciting already got tired, you know. So, for example, my son is 20 years old. He didn't read any books that I wrote. And he reads, but he says, I don't need to read you, I know you. So I feel that the person who's most excited about my work is my brother. And he's always like a great partner to test on stories that don't actually work, you know. We can brainstorm about them, and he's a good partner.
Ну, вы с ним ссоритесь, ругаетесь?
You know, I used to fight a lot, and for some reason I don't fight as much as I used to. I don't feel that I became indifferent. It's just that I feel, when I look at myself back then, the time that I fought a lot, I think I was much more vain. And for me, I still have an opinion. I just don't think that it matters as much as I fought in the past.
Ну, у вас сейчас с братом много общих тем. Он как активист, вы вегетарианец. Правильно? Вы вегетарианец.
Yeah. My brother is an anarchist. Like, I mean, he's not... I think my brother is mostly... he started trying to legalize marijuana, but
Мне кажется, ему это удалось. Прогуливаясь по улицам Тель-Авива.
Yeah, no, but that's what he said. Everybody's smoking. Why not make it legal? But I'm saying that he's very political. He's an anarchist. He's anti-Zionist. he likes to demonstrate. He's the drummer of the standing together movement, that they are for coexistence of Israel and Palestinian. And he's the best brother one can wish for.
А почему вы отказались, кстати, от мяса?
When I was 5 years old, I went to see the movie Bambi. Disney, with my father. And there is a part where the hunters shoot Bambi's mother. And when they did that, I stood on the chair and I started shouting, "Turn on the light, turn on the light." And the people in the hall, they didn't understand what was going on, so they stopped the movie and turned on the light. And I said, "I will not have it." I was 5. They cannot kill Bambi's mother and stuff. And my father was very embarrassed because I made a lot of mess. And he says, why can't they kill her? And I said, because they kill her for no reason. And my father said, no, they're going to make a schnitzel out of her. They're going to eat her. And I said, I'm not going to eat Bambi's mother. And since then, I didn't eat it.
Это такая история, потому что, например, в российских или советских кинотеатрах такая история невозможна. То есть, чтобы маленький 5-летний ребенок остановил стоп, родителям было бы очень стыдно. Это большая разница в воспитании. Вас воспитывали свободным. Не было запретов.
I think that it has to do with the fact that my parents were children of war. So let's say my mother being totally orphaned, then for her, she knew that authority or the system is usually out there to screw her. When she's in an orphanage, they tell her, get out of the room, they probably give somebody food and they don't want her to see. So kind of my parents raised us in a very anarchistic way. It's like my parents would say to me, every day when you wake up, ask yourself if you want to go to school. And if you want, go. And if you don't go. Go to the beach. And when I was a kid, I would miss school a lot. And my parents would say to me, if you go, we'll cover for you. We'll say you were ill, you know. And with me, every year, at the end of the year, they would want to make me stay at the same class, you know, because I wouldn't come. And my parents would always come. And both my mother and my father were very handsome people. So if they had to talk with a female teacher, my father would come. And if they had to talk with a male teacher, my mother would come. And they had this monologue. And I would sit like this, and they would say, nature had punished him once, making him an ill kid who almost died. Now you want to punish him again? It's not nice, handsome school teacher. Oh, you know, and year by year, this is how I graduated.
Ох, а ваши дети также воспитывали?
So there is a weird story that my mother would have this habit that she would say that when it rains, you don't go to school. So all my life, even when I was 18, when it rains, I wouldn't go to school. And she said, with all due respect, nothing that your dumb teacher says is important enough to get wet for. If it's nice weather, go. But if no, you don't go. So when my son was supposed to go kindergarten and it rained, I said to him, you can't go to kindergarten, you know, because it rains. You have to stay with me. We have to play games. And my wife said, why can't he go? And I said, no, you don't go. And she says, but you can have an umbrella. And I said, no, you never go. But she insisted. And this was the first time I realized that not all the kids in the world stay home when there is rain.
Хорошие новости для спонсоров Шенкин 40.
Теперь вы можете задавать вопросы нашим звездным гостям в режиме реального времени. То есть не просто смотреть программу, а участвовать в ней вместе с нами. Илья Варламов и Станислав Кучер, Андрей Максимов и Леонид Парфенов, Игорь Губерман, Эдин Рубин, Екатерина Шульман и Семен Слепаков, Андрей Макаревич, Андрей Смоляков. Гостей у нас много.
А еще у спонсоров появилась возможность пообщаться с нами лично. Раз в месяц мы будем делать стримы специально для наших спонсоров. И это еще мы не говорим о раннем доступе к многим нашим видео.
Ну а если вы еще не наш спонсор, запомните, сделать это очень просто. Под названием канала есть кнопка «Стать спонсором». Нажимаете и выбираете удобный для себя вариант поддержки.
My wife always thinks most of the things that I do, because this is what I did all my life, my wife thinks that they are very strange. You know that, for example, when we just met, I had this thing that when I would take a taxi, I would always ask the taxi when he drops me if he needs to go to the restroom. Because it seemed to me like crazy that when you work on a taxi, you drive people all the time, but you don't have a toilet. And one time, a taxi driver says, yeah, I need to pee. So we came home and, to my home, and he peed, and I want to make myself coffee. And my wife was sleeping in the afternoon. So she opened the door like she was a t-shirt, and then suddenly she sees these guys unzipping. And we had a big fight. And she said, you can't bring taxi driver to pee. And I say, you're an evil woman. What do you want them? To take a crap in the trunk of the car? You're so bad. And we had a fight. And in the end, she said, okay, let's call 5 people we know. We make a list. And we ask them if they ask their taxi driver if they want to pee in there. And she said, if one of them will say yes, I apologize. And we asked them, and they all said no. And I said to my wife, I didn't know that we were surrounded by such selfish, egocentric people. I don't know if I want them as friends if they would let a taxi driver pee in his pants.
Вы поменяли всех друзей.
No, I kept a friend, I kept the wife, but I told the taxi driver that I'm sorry, I can't have them peeing in my house anymore.
Интересная история, кстати, с семьей в Израиле, которую я не могу понять. С одной стороны, семья это очень важна. Шаббат, привезти, поесть всем вместе. С другой стороны, такое ощущение, что в Тель-Авиве, во всяком случае, живут очень свободные люди. Свободные отношения. Если мне не нравится, я с тобой развожусь. Я не хочу терпеть. Не как в русской культуре. Мы вместе, мы должны терпеть до конца жизни, нам всем плохо, но судьба. Здесь как-то по-другому. Или я ошибаюсь?
Yeah,
семья в Израиле это что?
I think that the Israeli society is the fuel of the society. It lives on some kind of an oxymoron or a contradiction. And that's the fact that it's kind of it's a society that is very, very religious and in that sense very conservative. But on the other hand, it's also a society that is very, very anarchistic and very wild. I think the first time I did a reading tour in Korea, I was on a TV show and they said to me, please tell us, we don't know anything about Israel, what is Israel? So I said to them, imagine a country that is so constraining and strict and religious and fundamentalist that they don't allow public transportation on Shabbat. And then they said to me, like Iran. And I said, yeah, wait a moment. But imagine a society that is so liberal and open-minded that when we need to send somebody to represent us in the Eurovision, we send a transvestite and she wins. And say, California. And I say, this is Israel. Half Iran and half California. It's like a pepperoni pineapple pizza. It doesn't make any sense, but it tastes good. But for me, again, I like anything that has character. It's like, as a writer, I travel a lot and I find myself sleeping in hotels before reading in all kinds of the world. And I have this special liking for old hotels that have things that are not very efficient. When they have those kind of things that you can put your shirt and it irons it on the wall, or they use the space in the wrong way. And I say, this is human character. This is somebody here and saying, I like that, I'm doing that mistake. And today everything is so kind of streamlined, zero friction, everything efficient. And you say, okay, but all the time, it's like the world is fighting to give us free time. But what will we do with this free time? You know, they want to give us the most pragmatic space. But what will we do with this pragmatic space? I think that we don't have this freedom and liberty to make the mistakes that create our identity. We're just supposed to do all the time the right thing, you know?
Имеем право.
Yeah. It's I tell you a weird story, okay? But I read in the somewhere in a magazine that Quentin Tarantino, he wrote about the movies that he likes, and he wrote about Paul Thomas Anderson movies that he doesn't like the actor. So all Hollywood was like this, saying the actor, he said something pro-Palestinian, and Tarantino, he's married to Israel. So he's saying that he doesn't like this actor acting.
На дочке Цвика Пик.
Of Tzvika Pik, yeah. Yeah, so I'm saying, so here's a huge argument. And then people who are pro-Palestinian started doing posts saying, this actor is actually good. Now, I'm saying, when I saw a movie and I said, I don't like this actor, this would be my taste. It would be okay. Now, when you say, I don't like something, they say, are you pro-Russian? Are you pro-Ukrainian? Are you homophobic? Are you against COVID? No, I just don't like it, you know. Now, even not liking crème brûlée becomes political. And the idea is that, for me, when you're exposed to art, it's like a dream. When I have a dream, I don't always like my dreams. You know, sometimes in my dream, people do stuff to me that I don't enjoy, you know. But I'm allowed to have it in my dream. I'm not saying you're dreaming something that is wrong, because the dream is a way of understanding who I am. And I'm saying now we're using art as some kind of a shovel, you know. We don't want to get lost in art. We want art to be our tame dog. We're going to kick you away if you don't say what I want. Sit down, do this. And instead of us seeing the art as something that is transcendent in the sky, it becomes this mat where we clean our shoes on. I want to show you that I'm okay, I'll boycott this writer, okay? I'm okay. So what is art, you know, if the idea that my opinion, my political views are more important than my writing, then I say, so where does it put writing? You know, at the bottom of the list, you know.
Это очень интересный момент, особенно с точки зрения, глядя на Россию сейчас. Потому что многие известные актеры там за Путина, многие известные актеры против Путина. И все это, и ты не понимаешь уже, как к ним относиться. Потому что тебе нравился этот актер, но вроде бы как его взгляды не совпадают с твоими. И это накладывается, и очень сложно разделить это все.
But I think that this is all about some kind of current megalomania that entire humanity has. Because the idea is that I live in this world, and when I see a movie or read the text, it affects me. Now, sometimes I say, I don't want to read your book. Why? I don't like you. You're too tall. It's okay. It's my point of view. But the idea is that in the hierarchy is that when I meet a text, I don't care who wrote it. I don't know where it takes me. I'm going through an experience. Now, the people who was always afraid from that were fascists, Stalinists, religious fundamentalists. I once met a woman that read her first book when she was 20. And she said, until the age of 20, my parents were very Christian. And they said to me, you can't just pick a book, because a book, you know how you enter it, but you never know how you're going to come out. And they're right. But life is entering it without knowing how you come out, unless you want just to obey, you know.
Примерно знаем, чем закончится.
It depends. But what I'm saying is that we were all born, but it's just this idea of claiming your life. I can tell you, let's say in the last Iran war with the missiles, there is something that I hate. When you see people are being totally indoctrinated, they have this, you know, they go, oh, you know. Now, I admit, I don't always go to this bomb shelter. I'm a bad man, but I have to protect my rabbit. So many times I see in the balcony all the people going out because there is this pre-siren thing, wait outside. The missiles explode in the air, they wait, and then the app says to them, go into the shelter, and they go to the shelter, you know. And I'm saying this kind of idea of us kind of becoming some servants of something. When I was in New York, I was going in the street with a student of mine. And I said to her, the weather, it doesn't look good. And she said to me, let me check. And she was checking in her app. And while she was checking, it started raining. And she said to me, it's gonna rain. She was wet when she was saying it. So I'm saying, what have become of us? Why don't we trust ourselves? Why don't we go outside and say, it's cold, it's warm? Why do we have to check an app? My view, I can see the entire studio. When I look at the phone, I can see a rectangular this big. Why do I have to go all my time look at here? Let's say I'm Bambi's mother, okay? If I'm Bambi's mother, I should look around and search for hunters. I shouldn't watch over the Facebook how other Bambis are being eaten and shot in other lands and say, I'm blocking you because you're a bad lion. You know, I just want to live my life. And I think that what's happening right now, I wrote an op-ed for the New York Times, and I say it reminds me very much the biblical story of the Tower of Babel. Because the story of the Tower of Babel was that every person who built this building was sure that this is the most amazing thing that's going to happen. But each of them invented what the building will be like to themselves and ignored and despised everybody else, you know? And I'm saying what this kind of breeds is in the end a building that will fall down, because in the end it's not humanity solving global warming. It's humanity respecting each other, not killing each other. If on the way of solving global warming, I will start a civil war in which all the humanity will be killed, then I just want to be important. It's like, I feel that humanity right now is going almost through a tantrum stage. It's like, when you have a child and you say to him, I'm going to buy you ice cream, and you go and the ice cream store is closed, he can lie down on the floor and says, you promised me, you promised me, you promised me. And you say, son, I can't do anything, it's closed. And he says, but you promised me, but you promised me. And now we're living in this tantrum age where every person kind of holds the word in their hand and they say, you see, Anton, this is the word. You think that your cup is the word? Fuck you, your is wrong. This is the word. And going with your precious word in your hand while we all go to separate direction. I must say that I'm very pessimistic about the future of humanity, but our ending gonna make a beautiful story.
Наш разговор происходит 8 октября 2021 года,
да.
Чтобы вы знали. И поэтому любые попытки со мной встретиться сейчас после этой передачи на улице закончатся, скорее всего, ничем.
Друзья мои, большая премьера на Шенкин 40 весь этот месяц, один раз в неделю. Андрей Орлов, Орлуша. Говорим, слушаем,
Молчим и слушаем.
молчим.
Говорим и слушаем. Это в школе на последней парте. Говорим и слушаем, да?
Ставьте уведомления, чтобы не пропустить. Нас не убьют после этого разговора, не?
Я не знаю, я завтра улетаю.
ChatGPT у вас стоит?
I have it, but I don't really use it a lot. I must say that I never studied literature. I studied math. And I was in a project that was kind of supposed to help AI develop creativity and stuff. But the truth is that the more you understand AI, the less you want to work with it. I want to say something like, people
что вы поняли о нем?
What I understand is if I have a metaphor for AI, it's like, you know, those Americans, they have this drive-through hamburger thing. So the AI is like this hamburger thing. You have this teenager who sits all the time. He sits in the back room. He watches porn. He smokes. He does things. And once in a while, somebody comes and says, "Give me a hamburger." And then he says, "Okay, here." And you say, "It's not a hamburger." I say, "Okay, here." Until you say it's a hamburger. Now, the nature of relationship of you and AI is whenever you engage in a conversation with an AI, they just want you to be content. They have no interest in reality. They just want you to be happy. Now, I'm saying AI, even though it communicates with you like a human being, it's not a human being. And I'm saying that what's crazy is that people prefer the AI for human beings. Because let's say, look at me, I'm a person who talks a lot. If I was a ChatGPT that talks a lot, you would go and say, "Edgar, shut up, talk about sports," and it would be more fun, you know, than to be able to deal with me and my wishes and what I want. And what we're doing is basically, by communicating with AI, we're bringing down our tolerance to be able to bear a human companionship.
Согласен. 100%. Друзья мои, зрители Шанкин 40, пожалуйста, пишите, что вы думаете по этому поводу. Очень интересно всегда читать, понимать, как вы к этому относитесь. А пока давайте перенесемся, как ни странно, в Россию. Вы там были в 2016-м последний раз.
I visited Russia a lot of times. I have many crazy stories from Russia. You want a crazy story from Russia?
Конечно.
Okay, so about 10 years ago, I had a car accident and I broke 2 ribs and I was in a very bad condition. So I canceled all my tours. I was supposed to go to 8 countries and I canceled all of them, except Russia. Because the person who was supposed to arrange my event in Russia, he said to me, we've announced this event, you know, months ago. It was for Jewish readers mostly, and the people arranged and they read the book and they came. And he said, "I understand if you can't come for the ribs, but they will be so disappointed." So I said to him, "Don't tell anyone else. I'm canceling everything, but I'm coming." It was like a week after I broke my ribs. I was in there. And I said, "But one thing I want," because I remember from my last trip, that it would be wonderful if there would be somebody when you get me in the train station, because I was supposed to go to St. Petersburg, the person that gets me in the train station should speak English. And the person arranged, he says, you don't understand. I'm going to bring a driver, a woman that will speak English fluently, and a woman that will speak Hebrew. So you can talk to whoever you want, and don't worry." And he said, from the train station, it's like a 25 minutes ride. We'll take you there. I know it's difficult with the ribs. You're going to rest. And I said, great. And then I arrived, I think it was like 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. It was already pitch dark. I wasn't well dressed.
Поздно, 2 часа дня.
Yeah, and I came with a coat that is good for Israel, not for St. Petersburg. And also, I thought that in the train I can charge my phone, which was a naive thought because it was a very old train and I couldn't charge the phone. So I get to the station, I stop, I get on the deck, I'm very cold, my ribs are hurting, there's nobody there. So I call the person and I say to him, there's nobody here. He said, no, you must look for them. I say, there are 3 people? He said, no, they're just the driver. And I said, yeah, but what with the woman that speaks Hebrew? He says, oh, this bitch, she screwed me in the last moment, she canceled. What with the person that speaks English? Oh, poor woman, her son is ill. But don't worry, the driver is there, he's waiting for you. You can see him, he's very tall.
Это было в Питере или в Тель-Авиве? Очень израильская история.
So maybe it's a more Jewish story, you know? So I say to him, I'm here, there's nobody here. He says, that's me calling for a moment. And then he calls me after a minute, he says, Edgar, you were right. The bastard lied to me. He's in a bar. I heard the glasses. And I said to him, what the hell are you doing? You're getting drunk? We have somebody with broken ribs. So he said, he's going to be there in 3 minutes. He's going to take you to the place. And don't worry, I fired him already. I told him, you go to your family and you say, we're going to go to sleep hungry because I left this guy in the train station. I said, listen, you don't have to fire him. It's just he says, Edgar, don't tell me how to run my business. I'm very, very offended and I want to fire him. So I waited at the train station. A person come, a head taller than you, really like the size of a refrigerator, you know, very, very tall, very drunk, red nose, seems to be very angry, no word in English. He comes to me, he walks to me like those, and I have a suitcase, and it was a big suitcase. He lifts it with his pinky, just the finger, he puts the finger, and he holds it above his head, and he looks at me like this, turns his back and starts walking. And this guy walks in
Я думал, второй палец он поднял вас.
No, he was just walking, and I was trying to walk after him, and he was walking very fast, and I was the ribs. And we get out of the station, and he has this black car. It's in the snow. He opens the trunk of the car. He takes my suitcase, looks at me, throws it in, and bangs the thing, and goes and enters the car and closes the door. So I say to myself, maybe it's not a good thing to get together in the car. He seems not to like me, you know? So I hesitate. And then when he sees I don't get in, he walks out of the car, he opens the door, he kneels on his knee and go like this. So I get into the car and I say, you know, I think that this guy is drunk. His boss fired him, saying that I told him that he wasn't there, that he fired him.
Из-за вас.
Because of me. And I can't communicate with him, and I don't know what to do. And then I say to myself, Edgar, you know, it's 25 minutes. You know, just count the seconds. Everything's going to be okay. And then we go for something like 20 minutes, and I say, okay, 5 minutes is going to be okay. And the guy, not nice, but okay, 5 minutes was there. And then he breaks with the wheel and gets into a forest. This wasn't in my plan. Like I'm supposed to be in the hotel in 5 minutes. He go into a forest. And I look at him and he looks at me in the mirror, and when our eyes meet, he goes, and he's a big guy, and I have broken ribs, and we're in the forest. And I look at my phone, and I have 5% or 3%.
Zero.
Yeah. So I tried to call the guy who fired this guy to say to him, listen, he took me to a forest, I don't know. Answering machine, he's not there, he's busy. So I called my wife. And my son at the time was very young. So I call her, she says, hey, how are you doing? And I say, yeah, I'm in St. Petersburg, but you know, it's beautiful here, yeah. And I said, can you call our son? And she said, why? He said, I don't know, I want to say goodbye to the two of you. And she says, why? I said, I don't know, call him. And I say to him, oh, my son, you know how much I love you. You know, there wasn't a day since you were born that I was thinking of you. And he says, Dad, what's going on? And he says, I don't know, I'm just sentimental. And my wife says, okay, that's what, did you drink? And I said, yeah, I guess I drink. And then the phone dies. Now, we go in this forest, I say 50 minutes. And I say to myself, very simple, when he opens the door, I'm going to kick him and start running. You know, that's my plan. Not good plan, but this
Krav Maga.
No, I'm a very weak person, I'm a coward, but it's okay. But I say, I'm going to kick him as hard as I can and I'm going to start running. And just as he seemed to be slowing down, he gets out of the forest and he stops next to a hotel. And I see this guy coming out of the hotel, which apparently is the guy that fired him. And I see him, and they start shouting at each other in Russian. And then he opens the trunk, he takes my suitcase, and he throws it in the snow, and he shouts at the other guy, and he goes there, and he drives. And I said to the person who invited me, I said to him, you know, it was crazy. You said 25 minutes. He took me to a forest. And the guy says, yeah, you have to go through a forest. And he said, yeah, but it was 90 minutes, not 25. He said, my friend, Tovarish, my friend, if I would say to you 90 minutes from train station, you would never come.
Хорошие новости для спонсоров Шенкин 40.
Теперь вы можете задавать вопросы нашим звездным гостям в режиме реального времени. То есть не просто смотреть программу, а участвовать в ней вместе с нами. Илья Варламов и Станислав Кучер, Андрей Максимов и Леонид Парфенов, Игорь Губерман, Дин Рубин, Екатерина Шульман и Семен Слепаков, Андрей Макаревич, Андрей Смоляков. Гостей у нас много.
А еще у спонсоров появилась возможность пообщаться с нами лично. Раз в месяц мы будем делать стримы специально для наших спонсоров. И это еще мы не говорим о раннем доступе к многим нашим видео.
Ну а если вы еще не наш спонсор, запомните, сделать это очень просто. Под названием канала есть кнопка «Стать спонсором». Нажимаете и выбираете удобный для себя вариант поддержки.
Вы как-то говорили, что русские классики, Чехов, Достоевский, повлияли на вас.
You know, I think there are writers like Isaac Bабel,
Бабель.
or Daniel Harms, that influenced me in a kind of more specific way. Like, I mean, as a short story writer, of course, I was very much influenced by Babel, by Goголь, for sure. And I must say that, that when it comes to Dostoevsky, I like reading Dostoevsky and I appreciate his writing, but I'm not very much for psychologistic literature.
Вы на иврите читали или на английском? Не, на английском, not Russian. English, Hebrew.
So if I have a chance to read something in its original language, I do. And if not, it depends. It could be English or Hebrew. Usually I go for English just because it's more accessible.
И чем они повлияли?
There is something about Isaac Bабel and the way that he captures reality, that there is something about his stories which I cannot totally explain, but there are something that I take with me for life. It's like something happens in the story, and I actually feel how the path that I took in my life changes. And I think that the way that Babel does it is really by this kind of extreme honesty and this kind of idea of almost kind of sacrificing everything to reach that vantage point where you can see things as they are. I'm also amazed by the idea of how he can do it in such a short text. And of Tolstoy I love, but Dostoevsky from all the greats is the ones that I'm kind of. It's like I appreciate him, but he's not my friend. He's good, but I won't go and get drunk with him.
Хорошо. Я предлагаю сейчас небольшой блиц.
Okay.
Коротенький. Например, самый странный предмет в ваших карманах.
I don't have anything in my pocket except for my cell phone because everything else I lose.
Что самое прекрасное в этом мире?
The fact that we'll never know.
В какой-то вашей книге было написано «Смех ребенка». Мне очень понравилось. Золотая рыбка предлагает вам исполнить желание. Что будем просить?
I think that if I would be able to answer this question in a sincere way, not just a TV, then I would be an enlightened person, I think. And I'm not there yet.
А какой язык, на который вас переводили, самый красивый?
I would say that the least common, I would say it's Farsi. It's actually like my books came out in more than 50 languages, and the story of the Farsi translation was that it came out in Afghanistan, but it was smuggled to Iran, and my translator to Farsi said that the Ministry of Culture in Iran, they started sending bulletin because this book was The 7 Good Years. It was a memoir about my life. And they started saying that this book is a fictitious book, it's not, and that Etgar Keret does not exist, but it's a think tank of Mossad agents who invented the life of a person to humanize Israeli demons for the Iranians.
Что для вас политика?
Well, can I give you a long answer or should I be rude?
Well, freedom, Israel.
Okay. So I'll give a short lecture. Politics comes from the word polis, which means in Greece city. And basically it's all about dealing with the bullshit thing that you have in a city where your sewer is or where everything is. And I think that there is something about politics that it's really, really not that interesting. Every taxi driver that you speak with wants to express his political views. But I always say to them, what are your political views? It's basically saying how you think the world should be run when you're not running the world. When we lived in a kingdom, we didn't say, oh, the king should do this, the king should do that. We would do our bloody work and live our bloody life. So with me, many times when, let's say, I'm a left-winger, and Israelis know I'm famous, so they know I'm left-winger. And most taxi drivers are right-wingers. So whenever I get on a taxi and somebody says, Etgar Keret, I want to argue with you about politics, I always say to the driver, okay, but I offer you a deal. We argue. But the one that wins the argument, the other person helps him implement the idea. For example, you say we should throw a nuclear bomb on Gaza. If you win this argument, we go to Dimona, we steal a bomb, and we throw it. Because if we don't, what's the point? That we'll sit in a car and we'll agree that something should happen and it doesn't happen? I said to him, think about your daughter. Think about your wife who's sitting at home and saying, this guy never brings me flour. Live your fucking life instead of repeating something you saw on CNN.
А есть какое-то решение проблемы, кстати?
To what problem? Every problem has a solution.
То, что Газа.
This. Okay, yeah. This is easy.
Easy.
This is very easy. I'll explain. Because, you're new to Israel, I'll explain to you. Whenever we're here, there are always some kind of conflict. People shoot missiles, people do this, terrorism, This is part of the ambient, okay? All the time, people look at those things that are always there and will always survive there because we're smart and we're strong and we win. Everything's okay. But the big problem is what's happening in the Israeli society. And this is what makes me pessimistic and angry. Because the idea is not what we do with the world around us. The idea is that when, a prime minister asks the president of the US to threaten the president of Israel to get him off a trial, the system isn't working. When the head of the medical committee says that she wants to quit the European Union and just make sure that women will get married virgins, which is personally against my interests, is something that is crazy, So I'm saying, I really feel that instead of people sitting here and saying, how can we beat Iran? They would say, how can we have some kind of dialogue? How can we put a rule and say, people who speak like this, we send them away? How can we defend our society? And I'm saying, I don't know how it is in Russia, but for example, it's very, very easy in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, if you live in Russia, to say, look what happens in the front. And this is a good way for somebody not opening the school, not cleaning your streets, saying, look, they're bombing us. And I'm saying, Putin and Bibi, in that sense, they have the same strategy. They say, look at history, look at the future, look at Sparta, look at this. And I'm saying that if you're a less impressed person like me, I say, I don't want to look at them. I want to look at somebody who doesn't have a job. I want to look at somebody whose house got blown by a missile in June that I know personally, and still didn't get his money back and doesn't have anywhere to live. I want to see that, I mean, if we're able to keep our community, then everything will be easy. Right now, I'm saying, when I went to the US and I went on an Uber, then the driver asked me, where are you from? I said, from Israel. He said, oh, you guys are amazing. And I said, amazing at what? And he said, killing people at distant places. I want to live in a country that, that my claim to fame wouldn't be that I'm able to assassinate anyone in the world, but my claim to fame will be that I have a culture that is diverse, that is tolerant. This is our challenge. If you learn the Jewish history, we had 2 temples. Both of them got burned. None of them got burned, not by Iran and not by Hamas. They all got burned because we tried to kill each other, because we had a civil war. And this civil war pumping up here, we ignore it because we say Iran, 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 but this is the real threat. Our inability to live together.
В общем-то, мы встретились сегодня, чтобы как-то лучше понять друг друга.
For sure, for sure. A tall man with no hair and a short man with a lot of hair. We have something to teach each other.
Конечно. Я уже запомнил, значит, слово как это называется? Хуцпа. Меня учили слово совланут.
Савланут.
Что еще нужно знать? Какие слова? Mazgan. For sure.
So I think the most important word in Hebrew, and it's not in every language, is law. Law. I'm saying you can get along without can, because you get people who say, here, eat this. But you can't get along without a law. I think that when you live in Israeli society, you should build your borders. Like, when somebody comes to say, you want a falafel? You say can. You say, you want me to hug you? Say, maybe. You say, you want to marry my granddaughter? You say, no. The moment that you know when to say no, you became an Israeli.
Это очень важно. Toda haba.
Toda lecha.
I hope that we will see each other maybe in 1 year, and maybe situation will be different. I hope.
Again, the situation for sure will be different. I don't know if it will be better or it will be different. The big question is that when we meet a year from now, if we will be different and how different we will be. Because in the end, it's your story. We're not working for the world. If COVID, global warming, it's there. But in the end, it's 2 people in a room. And if we can treat each other in the normal way, and if we can be curious, and if we can just get off that grid, we can have a great life.
Ну и потом такое ощущение, что сейчас жизнь, извините, но гораздо круче любого писателя.
Well, I think that life used to be a novel or a film. Now it's a bunch of Instagram clips. One moment, a cat swimming, the second moment, somebody dying in an avalanche. I'm saying the word is like the consciousness of Trump. You don't know, is it a Riviera? Is it the gates of hell? Are we buying Greenland? Are we bombing Venezuela? The word had lost its story. And the story comes from people being connected to themselves, not connected to the world. The moment that we each will know a story, each country will know its story, that the world could move forward. Right now, look at what happened in the Russia-Ukrainian war and us. Wars just start, they don't end. It's like opening parentheses. Because everything kind of just get along, there is no big plan. If you would wake up Winston Churchill every night and say to him, what's most important for you? And he say, to beat Hitler. If you wake up Donald Trump, he would say, to play golf, to take Iran, to take Greenland. Every time he would say something else. And in a world without a story, the river becomes into mud.
Кен. Нахон. Нахон, друзья мои, спасибо большое, что этот вечер вы провели вместе с нами. Пожалуйста, делитесь этим видео с своими друзьями, да и, в общем-то, и не обязательно с друзьями. Рассказывайте о Шанкин 40.
With your enemies.
Гораздо лучше, чтобы это видео посмотрели не только друзья, но и враги. А как еще? Договариваться и превращать этот мир из болота в горную прозрачную речку. Спасибо большое.
Туда.